George Orwell took about 2 years to write 1984. He began working on it in 1946, shortly after finishing Animal Farm, and completed it by 1948, with the book being published in June 1949. During this period, Orwell faced significant health challenges, including a battle with tuberculosis, which required hospitalization. Despite these difficulties, he persisted in completing the novel, which became one of his most celebrated works. The title, 1984, and it's said to be the reversal of the final 2 digits of the year he finished writing it. George Orwell was born in Motihari, a small town in the state of Bihar, India, on June the 25th, 1903. At the time, India was part of the British Empire, and Orwell's father, Richard Walmsley Blair, worked as a civil servant in the opium department of the Indian Civil Service. Orwell's birth name was Eric Arthur Blair, and his family was of British descent. They belonged to the lower upper middle class, a social stratum with limited means but a respectable status. When Orwell was 1 year old, his mother, Ida Mabel Blair, took him and his older sister Marjorie back to England. He grew up in England, although his early years in India likely influenced his later writings on colonialism and class. Motihari now features a small memorial commemorating Orwell's birth, though his connection to India was relatively brief. George Orwell drew inspiration for 1984 from a variety of personal experiences, historical events and literary influences. Orwell's direct observations of totalitarianism shaped much of 1984. He was deeply critical of Stalinism and of the oppressive practices of the Soviet regime, which he observed during and after his time in Spain during the Spanish Civil War. The propaganda, show trials and suppression of dissent informed the party's actions in 1984. Nazi Germany also was an influence. The brutal control, surveillance and use of propaganda under Hitler's regime influenced the novel's depiction of authoritarian control. Orwell fought in the Spanish Civil War on the side of the anti-fascist militia and witnessed betrayals and propaganda firsthand. This experience gave him a deep skepticism of political ideologies and inspired the themes of betrayal, repression and manipulation in 1984. Orwell foresaw the potential for technology to be used as a tool of surveillance and control. Innovations like television and mass communication in the 40s suggested how authoritarian regimes might monitor and manipulate entire populations. Orwell observed the effects of World War II and its aftermath on Britain, including food rationing, bomb-damaged cities and the government's increased control over daily life. The dreary, impoverished world of Airstrip 1, which is formerly England, reflects these conditions. Orwell's commitment to exposing abuses of power and his belief in the importance of individual freedom shaped the book. He was deeply skeptical of unchecked government power, propaganda, and the erosion of truth, which became central themes in 1984. His literature and philosophy inspirations included We, 1924, which is a dystopian novel about a totalitarian society, and it was a significant influence on 1984. Orwell acknowledged its impact though he developed his themes independently. Orwell was influenced by the satirical tone of John Swift and the critical social commentary of Charles Dickens. Wells' speculative fiction inspired Orwell's envisioning of future societies. The geographical tension between the Allies and the Soviet Union was the beginning of the Cold War, and fears of global totalitarian future shaped the novel's themes of perpetual war and political control. In short, 1984 was Orwell's response to the social trends of his time, and that combined with a deep-seated fear about the future of humanity under oppressive systems. So how did he write 1984? Well, it was certainly under challenging circumstances, both personal and professional. His writing process reflected his determination to complete the novel despite numerous obstacles. He wrote much of 1984 on the remote Scottish island of Jura, where he lived in a small farmhouse called Barn Hill. He moved there in 1946 to escape the distractions of city life and focus on writing. The farmhouse lacked modern conveniences like electricity and running water, and Orwell led a simple, rugged life which allowed him to concentrate on his work. He was battling tuberculosis throughout the writing process. His condition worsened significantly during this time, and he often wrote while in great pain and physical weakness. Despite his declining health, Orwell remained committed to finishing the novel, often working in bed and under difficult circumstances. He reportedly wrote sections of 1984 while hospitalised. Orwell was known for his meticulous writing habits. He drafted and redrafted sections of 1984, revising extensively to ensure clarity and impact. And he wrote by hand and on typewriter, working long hours to produce the manuscript. His revisions were painstaking, reflecting his perfectionism. Orwell believed passionately in the themes of 1984, particularly the dangers of totalitarianism and the erosion of truth. His personal convictions fueled his determination to complete the novel, even as his health deteriorated. By late 1948, Orwell finished the manuscript and sent it to his publisher, Secker and Warburg. The title 1984 was chosen as a reflection of the future, and possibly a play on reversing the digits of 1948, as we explored earlier. The novel was published in 1949, just months before his death in January 1950. Despite being an atheist, Orwell expressed a wish to be buried according to the rites of the Church of England. His friends arranged for his burial in Sutton Courtenay because the churchyard had space available and was located near the home of one of his friends, David Astor, the editor of The Observer. His grave is marked by a simple headstone that reads his real name, Eric Arthur Blair, without mention of his pen name, George Orwell. The simplicity of his grave reflects Orwell's modest nature and desire for an unassuming resting place.